most of you must not know me, but I'm actually working for a French consulting firm, which is written in the below in the slide. I'm an InfoSec manager, and I've been working in the industry of cybersecurity for 8 years now. I've worked for computer emergency response team first, and then I decided that it was way more fun to attack things than to defend things. So actually, I switched, and now I'm leading the two kind of activities actually. So I'm mainly involved in red team operations, but I'm also performing some incident response activities as well, and the security operations centers activity also. So the agenda for that presentation is the following. First, we're going to focus on the reasons why I decided to develop yet a new tool. Then we're going to enter the core of the features of the tool, and at the end, and this is, I hope this won't be the end of your involvement in that project. I will make a call for contribution because it's a very live project, and I hope that you will be enthusiastic to participate to that project. So first, you probably read that it was about red team, but you also probably wonder why another geek has decided to develop yet another tool, because there are already so many tools on GitHub, and oh my God, I can't find the right tool for my operation. So let's get things a bit more specific, because actually I don't even see you, I don't know you, and I don't know if you've got a red team operation background. So just to be specific about what I mean by red team operations. So red team operations are not just offensive activities, just audit activities. When we're talking about red team, we're talking about testing in information system security deeply in real conditions, where we can use social engineering attacks, we can use physical security attacks, we can steal things, we can DDoS things in some cases. So, and the idea is to get one target, but to bounce from that target to the final goal of your operation, because what is very important in red team operations is that you've got a goal, you've got a very precise, very specific objective to reach. And from a client perspective, red team operations are very interesting because they mimic the real guys that are attacking them. They aim at designing and performing real life attacks. And at the end of an operation, and it will be the transition with my presentation, at the end of the operation, you do not want to have a lot of stuff you are lost in. You want to have a clear answer to provide to the board. You want to say, for instance, yes, I'm able to enter your system and perform a bank transfer on my account, for instance. Or I'm able to read the CEO mail. I'm able to steal that research and development data you care so much about. But you must wonder, if you are a bit in the field of cybersecurity, of pen testing, you must wonder why is that guy has that guy decided to develop yet another tool, because there is already a lot of tools. And actually, yes, this is one of the first thing I saw when I've started looking for tools for my red team operations, like almost 3 years ago. I thought, okay, there are tons of tools, and there is no aggregation of these tools. And when you use these tools, you have to read documentation, if any. You have to be very careful about not committing operational security failures. For those who wouldn't know what operational security failures would be, I give some example at the end of my presentation, but it would be, for instance, that you have a very good attack methodology, but you've just forgotten to hide your IP, for instance, at one point of your operations, so that the computer emergency response team, they are going to track your IP and get a hint about the organization you belong to. So what do we want with that tool? Basically, we wanted to facilitate red team operations, and specifically, we wanted to reduce the time to build a red team operations infrastructure. We wanted to enable complex actions with one or two clicks, so that you do not have to have Top Gun pen testers to get involved in each red team operations. You can have one Top Gun pen tester and one junior pen tester involved, and it's very important because nobody is going to know everything about everything, and even the most famous pen tester among us are not going to be as efficient in all steps of the kill chain. So the first thing I'm going to begin with is what the tool looks like, because I don't want to get into very theoretical explanation for now. So basically, what you can see here is just basically you can look for Abaddon on GitHub and find it on the Wavestone GitHub account. And you've got a script at the root of the repository, which is called abaddon.sh, very original name, and which helps basically launching the tool. It restarts the database and some little things. So of course the tool works now. It's authenticated, and basically you can probably see, if you are right now on the GitHub repository, you can see that it's a Django application with a PostgreSQL database, and a lot of other things I'm going to describe now. So at each step of the presentation, I'm going to say what works now and what could be improved. So for now, of course, there is an authentication, but it's local. It depends on the local files or database you have on your computer or server. And of course, in a very industrial environment, would like to authenticate against an external service, but it's not in the priorities of the project now. Next interesting feature you've got in Abaddon is, like, you probably know that in the red team operations, you have to follow, or you can follow, you might follow the kill chain. So, or if you're very trendy, you can follow the MITRE attack matrix. But at the end of the day, you're going to begin with reconnaissance actions, and you are going to begin with one question is, okay, I have a lot of reconnaissance tools again, and how do I aggregate all the tools? Because Nmap is cool. Everybody knows Nmap. ReconNG is very cool. Most of you must know ReconNG. Perhaps you already know Hunter.io, which I find very useful to find some mail for people who want to fish. And of course, there is the OWASP tool called AMAT, which is very helpful again. But I just picked some tools, and it is very difficult to aggregate all the results. And one of the objectives in Abaddon that I wanted to illustrate at the beginning of that presentation is we would like to aggregate all these information in one file that would be very easy to read for a pen tester. And from a cost perspective, if you are in red team, it's very interesting because you don't want to sell a mission to your client that takes 5 or 10 days just because you have to aggregate Excel sheets and CSV files. It's completely uninteresting from a pen tester point of view. All right. So, but okay, you've come to DEF CON. You must wonder, okay, is that guy really explaining us that he just aggregated some reconnaissance tools? Of course, no. Of course, that was just the beginning. That was just an illustration of how Abaddon, the methodology of Abaddon, and how Abaddon can be useful. Because Abaddon is going to follow all the steps of the kill chain, and the reconnaissance phase is the first. But now it's time to build your infrastructure, because I have mentioned previously at the beginning of the presentation, it's one of the key objectives of Abaddon is to enable you, to allow you to build very quickly your CNC infrastructure. So a bit of architecture first. This is basically the command and control architecture you will be able to build. So what is there in it? Basically, in red team operations, we massively use AWS or GCP, but at the beginning of the development of Abaddon, I mainly focused on AWS. So what you can see here is first, you have your target network, the right of the scheme. So you have your victim you want to reach. And let's say you have you want to leverage a phishing campaign. You have to set up a number of servers in the cloud and not associated with you, preferably. So, for instance, what Abaddon helps you with is that in 1 or 2 clicks, you are able to deploy what you see below in the scheme, which is EC2 instance. For those who are not very familiar with AWS, EC2 is the server. It's a server instance. So you are able to, with 1 click, to deploy a server on AWS, and on that server to deploy a GoFish instance that is configured with the correct ports and that with the different passwords to avoid again operation authoritative error, to avoid that somebody connects to your GoFish infrastructure. So that's the first thing. It enables you to deploy in 1 click or 2 click GoFish on an EC2 instance. So the other thing it allows you is for the remote command execution scenario. It's the second scenario that is explained on the scheme. So let's say you have deployed a malware on your target network. You want to communicate with that malware securely and confidentially without being flagged by the defense team. And this is kind of tricky because we used to use domain fronting, but now, unfortunately, it's not working anymore. Now we're using a proxy protocol. I will come to that proxy protocol a bit later. It's basically a modified TCP protocol that helps you just forward the request. So to summarize things very simply, you have your target network, you have a malware installed on your target, and this malware is communicating with, again, an EC2 instance that you have on your AWS infrastructure. So your malware is communicating with a server in the cloud. And this server in the cloud, it has an Nginx proxy installed in it. And the Nginx proxy just uses the proxy protocol to just forward the data that is the malware, the communication of the malware. And what is very interesting with the proxy protocol is that it doesn't decrypt the data. So I'm not giving my client's data to AWS, and I'm not giving any opportunity for anyone to decrypt the data. So the data is forwarded to my infrastructure, and my infrastructure, what is it? It's first an Apache reverse proxy to get the communication of the malware and logs everything in red ELK, because I discovered red ELK almost 2 years ago now at Hack in Paris, and I was very enthusiastic about this tool, especially because I was working in the security operations center before, and I was very sensitive to the fact that it's very important to log things. So the Apache reverse proxy, it gets the malware communication, it logs everything, and it transfers, it forwards the communication to your CNC server. So our CNC server, we use Silent Trinity, developed by a byte leader, Marcelo Salvati, that you know probably, perhaps Marcelo Salvati is listening right now, I don't know. So it's a very gorgeous tool, basically. Many pen testers in my team, they have contributed to that tool. I'm not going to enter into much detail because it's not the main subject of that presentation. But at the end of the presentation, if you want to get more insight about Silent Trinity, I'll be happy to explain you how it works. So basically, your Apache reverse proxy forward server, because in some cases you want to do modification because between your malware communication and your CNC server. So this is something we encountered. So perhaps it's not useful for you, but it was useful for a lot of people. So we provided that. And this is the end of the architecture point of view. So it's a lot of information, and so now we are going to enter each step of that architecture one by one to make things more practical and more understandable. So let's go. So how do you deploy an EC2 instance? You can, for instance, click on the button deploy ECD. That would seem logical. And you can see in your console all the steps that are taken by the application. So you have some things to care about when you deploy an EC2 instance. You have to deploy a key pair you have to set up roles and set up some groups, and then you can choose to deploy GoFish on that instance that will show on the next slide. So for now, what Abaddon enables you is that you can just after you have installed Abaddon, you have to enter your AWS credentials, and then you're good to go. You can deploy one, several instances, undeploy them. You can monitor how they are deployed on the dashboard you can see here. Actually, what could be improved is the usage of Terraform. So actually, I'm going to show you just that because we almost finished that part. And the other thing we want to develop is to use Google Cloud Platform, not only AWS, because we don't want to be spotted just because we only use AWS. So with GoFish, it's very simple. Actually, you have just to when you deploy your EC2 instance, you just have to choose on which instance you want to deploy GoFish, and then you're good to go. You just have to choose and click submit, and yeah, you can see it on the screen, and it's good. So I will show you after that how it works with Terraform also. But no, you can access GoFish admin panel within minutes. And what works now is also that we change the default password of GoFish in a local configuration file. We also would like to deploy an HT access, but you can also use the AWS security groups to prevent people from accessing your GoFish. That's also very efficient. I spoke about using Terraform. So no, we do not have a GUI. So I just showed you what has been developed since the RSA conference. So in the last month, we have developed the Terraform capability. So it's basically how it works. You have a deploy.py script that will be available through the Abaddon GUI, and it's using a Terraform configuration file to just deploy an EC2 instance. So just now you can see on the screen that you have the EC2 instance that has been deployed, and then the GoFish that is going to be transferred. Then you have to configure the local firewall of your instance. So you can see on the screen allow TCP 22, allow TCP 80 for GoFish, allow TCP 33 for the admin panel of GoFish. We restart the SMTP server. We create the directory for GoFish when zip GoFish. And that's almost it. We ensure GoFish is properly started. I hope you are taking notes of the time it takes, because if you are in red team, if anybody has any performed red team operation, each time there is a pen tester saying, oh, by the way, how do you download GoFish? How do you install it? And as I said before, not everybody is a specialist in every field. So by using Abaddon, you can cut the time. If someone has not used Gofish in his life, he just has to click on the button, and that's good. You can see that our Gofish infrastructure is up and running. We are just killing the server now, so you can see that I'm not lying to you. We have the feature, and you can see that's very easy to use. So it will be very in a very short period of time. We're going to integrate that into our view, and that's it. So let's go to a bit of detail. So I did mention Red ELK, so perhaps you didn't know what Red ELK is. I mentioned that it has been developed almost 2 years ago, and I discovered that at Hack in Paris, but perhaps I was too fast for you. Perhaps you do not know what Red ELK is. So basically, it's an Elasticsearch log/Kibana stack that you probably must know. And it's configured to help red teamers. So this is the image I got from the official GitHub. You're very you should very much inquire into that tool if you do not know it, because it's very useful to have to log everything when you're in an operation, and it's not only useful. It's very necessary, because when you have a plan that says, oh, by the way, on Monday at 8, I had a production incident. Can you tell me if it's you? You have to prove that you are not tinkering with the production server that had an incident, for instance, at that time. And I also mentioned Silent Trinity a lot. So basically, it's a tool that choose in-memory sort of compilation. You have a stager that choose Boolean script. I didn't know Boolean. Marcel Salvati, if you're hearing, you're a genius, because you found that language that nobody knows about. And but it's very useful because it's sort of compiling your malware in the memory, and in that way it bypasses a lot of protection. So it's a multi-user, multi-server, it's modular, and a lot of things. All right, so I have mentioned the EC2 deployment. I have mentioned the Gofish deployment, but I didn't mention all the Red ELK and the CNC infrastructure deployment. So what you can see here is that I just clicked on the delivery panel on the left. I went to the deployment panel, and then I'm choosing to deploy local Red ELK infrastructure. So this is the first step. The second step is just there. So you can see that a few minutes later, it takes about, depending on your connection, it takes about 10 minutes to have everything up and running. I cut a bit the video, of course, because I was not going to make you wait for 10 minutes. But yes, after 10 minutes, you have what you can see here. So you have to download all your containers, because I'm going to speak about that a bit later, but actually when I say install all your infrastructure, I'm saying install all your containers, and yeah, you're good to go. Of the video here, you can see on the video that after a few minutes you have your deploy your demo infrastructure that you can undeploy. You have an Nginx proxy that is deployed on AWS, and you have your local Red ELK and T2 infrastructure. And just to show you how it works, we are using the Silent Trinity server. We are launching it. We are configuring the listeners, basically to listen, of course, to our malware connection. We are configuring the IP. I hope nobody here, my son that just entered the room, and my wife is the presentation. So, no, you can see on the PowerShell on another computer that, yes, is just getting the stager of Silent Trinity. Actually, the PowerShell that you can see is a Windows virtual machine on the same computer. So you can see the 15.188 is the proxy address, Nginx proxy address. So yeah, and you have your new session. All right. So that was for the demonstration of Silent Trinity. And we also use a face type to deceive the socks. So this is how it works. Actually, I mentioned the Apache proxy. I'm just going to go back because I don't want you to be lost, and remotely it's difficult. So I just showed you on this slide. You must see the EC2 instance with Nginx proxy, and I want to recall you that this server is forwarding the information to your Apache reverse proxy. But you must wonder, okay, I'm on the target network, and I wanted to. I'm a computer emergency response team, and I want to know what is going on because I see some communication, and I just try to communicate with the Nginx proxy by entering the address of the communication I see, because I see communication going from the victim network to the Nginx proxy, and I don't know where they are going, and I want to know. So I want to know, and I'm going to enter the address, but I'm not entering the address correctly because I do not have the correct identifier of that are needed to communicate with our CMC infrastructure. And so by entering the Nginx proxy domain name, which is the EC2 something AmazonIWS.com that you see in the URL, that I hope you see in the URL, you come to a completely uninteresting site about wildlife in that time. So Abaddon helps you defining that. And how does it help you? It would be a bit complicated to enter into that detail now, but just to summarize, when you have your communication coming to your Apache reverse proxy, you have an identifier that you can define in the Flask server, because on the Flask server, we did modify Silent Trinity to use unique identifiers, and then we are authenticating all our targets. So that helps us deceiving the SOC, and we decided to provide openly this methodology to you, so that you can use it in your red team operation. So you have it in Abaddon. I mentioned that under the hood we are using containers. So basically we are using Docker, that you probably know. And when I mentioned that we are installing a lot of things, we are basically installing only containers. We are not installing things that are not containers, because it's very difficult to maintain. And the other thing is the proxy protocol. I urge you actually to look into that protocol. It's very interesting. There is an RFC that has been written by a guy from HA Proxy, and it's very useful. It wasn't used actually at first for security purposes, but now it is used for security purposes, and it's very interesting. I mentioned that that we use cloud fronting, a domain fronting, not a cloud fronting. I'm sorry for the typo. And it show me your cloud front distribution. I'm sorry for the typo. So we used domain fronting, and Abaddon enables you to deploy CloudFront distribution. For those who didn't know, CloudFront is the content delivery network of Amazon. Abaddon enables you to deploy well-configured or domain fronting distribution. But well, domain fronting doesn't work anymore with GCP and AWS, so it's not that useful anymore. But we chose to keep the feature. And that's almost it for the tool. I have a few things left. So first of these things, the phishing domain that you use must not point to an IP address belonging to the red teamer organization at any time. I mean, this is not something we could automate. So when you're configuring your TLS certificate for your phishing domain, do not make it point to an IP address belonging to your organization, because if you make it point like 1 or 2 days or a week, the entry is going to be registered in, for instance, in passive DNS, and the computer emergency response teamers, they are going to be able to look for the history of your DNS registration and find you. And possibly they are going to reverse look at your IP and find all your clients, which is very nice. So use distinct domain names for the TNT domain name, TNT site, and the phishing website. And we used to use AWS simple email service, SMTP server, but as you've probably seen on the architecture scheme, we now use professional Gmail accounts because they are so much more ready. They bypass the filters very very more easily. And of course, don't forget to keep your infrastructure. We did perform physical intrusions, so Abaddon is not really helpful for that for the moment, but it will be actually because we used malwares that we dropped on pluggable devices, and Abaddon is on the brink of helping you generate the macros, for instance, for Excel worksheets that you use on these devices. So it's something under development. It was actually almost being, it was on the brink of being released at the beginning of May, but because of COVID-19, we have to postpone some development. So no, it's almost the end of the presentation, but I don't want to leave you before threatening you of making a contribution. You have to contribute because actually this is an open source project. We took the decision to open source all the work we've made, and red team operations are very sensitive operations. It's very complex to perform a red team operation from the beginning to the end, and we really would like to have your feedback, to have your contribution, to have pull requests from you. I had some pull requests already because the tool actually it was made public for RSA conference at the end of February, and I had some pull requests, but I want to have a lot more. So please contribute. Please install the tool. Please insult me if it doesn't work. So we need fine workers like you to help our red team to have a better tool. The main priorities for now are to enhance the user friendliness, because we know that GitHub tools are not the most user friendly tools you can find on the market. So we want to ensure that users they like Abaddon and they want to use it. And we have global features who are quite dedicated into. I provide enhanced reconnaissance features. I mentioned that a lot. And actually, we want to make the MITRE attack matrix more. We want to make it better covered, actually. And that's it for the call for contribution. So this is the last slide of my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that the noodles you were eating while I was speaking were good. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope you are healthy. And next week you should encompass red team operations in a more rigorous way, I hope. I hope that you are going to install Abaddon, that you are going to contribute. Let's be very enthusiastic about it. And I hope even that you would be able to give me on LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere you can reach me operational feedback about the use of Abaddon. And that's it for me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you everybody for joining.